Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast special emergency show. This is me strictly hockey. As I promised on social this afternoon, we are going to start with the biggest trade of the day. As it felt inevitable for several days now as the New York Rangers acquire Patrick Kane from the Chicago Blackhawks for a 2023 second-round pick that could become a first and a fourth-rounder. And there is a 3-team trade call tonight. So there's a third team in this deal, but we don't know who that third team is. Well, the fact that Patrick Kane is a New York Ranger and gave up a conditional second and a fourth and no important players is an absolute win for the Rangers. They now have acquired 2 big-time stars in the last month with him and Vladimir Tarasenko. And they have those guys to go with Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad, and Chris Kreider. That's a big 5 on offense. And now I believe that you can make a case they're the team to beat in the East. Maybe the team to beat to win the Stanley Cup if Igor Shesterkin plays like the Vezina Trophy winner that he was a year ago. So, a great trade for the Rangers. The Blackhawks probably should have traded him 2 years ago and he had more value. That's what happens when you trade a guy that you should have traded a while ago and don't get the proper value. You see this happen in sports all the time. And Chicago got more back for Sam Lafferty and Jake McCabe than they did for Patrick Kane. And that's really sad. But, like I said, the Rangers, you could argue it's a move they had to make. I don't necessarily agree with that take. I think they could have got away with not acquiring Patrick Kane and doing something smaller and going for more depth pieces and giving up like 7th round picks for cheaper guys that are physical. But you can't not have enough scoring. So in case there's a big injury on the Rangers, then they're like, oh, thank God they got Patrick Kane. So obviously Kane's a rental, Tarasenko's a rental, and expectations are high for the Rangers. If they don't make the Stanley Cup final, this season's a failure for the New York Rangers. It won't be as big as a failure as the Brooklyn Nets not winning anything with Kevin Durant, but it would probably be the second biggest failure in New York sports over the last 15 years if this team doesn't win. And that other, obviously, being the Brooklyn Nets with not winning with KD, Kyrie, and Harden. But yeah, this is a rock star team now, and they got to come through in the spring. Like I said, Chicago, they're just rebuilding at this point, gathering up as much assets as they can. And they could have gotten more for Patrick Kane. I really believe that they could have gotten more for Patrick Kane. And oh, by the way, that 2023 second, that could become a first. That'll become a first in 24 or 25 if the Rangers make the conference finals, which is very likely that they're going to make the conference finals. So, or very likely if they're playing at the level they were playing at a year ago. So, yeah, maybe the Blackhawks end up doing better in this deal than it looks right now. So I do think the Rangers, they probably won't win the Metropolitan Division, but they probably are the team to beat in that division come playoff time. I trust them more than I trust Carolina and New Jersey and Pittsburgh and Washington and the Islanders at this point. They were in the conference finals a year ago without Kane or Tarasenko. Now they have both of those guys, and they're a better offensive team now than they were a year ago. And obviously their defense needs to play up the par like it did in the playoffs last year. So let's stay in that division. Carolina's under pressure to do something. They missed out on Meyer. They missed out on Ryan O'Reilly. They can use a top 6 guy, whether it's a wing or a forward. There's a lot of guys getting traded left and right. But the question is, who would be that guy for Carolina? We would just have to go through like some of these rosters. So like, would Philadelphia trade in division? Would they be willing to trade Kevin Hayes? Because apparently everyone's available on that roster. Columbus, they're not going to trade Gaudreau. Would they be willing to trade Patrick Laine? I don't know about that. But Carolina needs somebody if they want to compete with the Rangers and even New Jersey at this point in the postseason. Obviously, New Jersey goes out and gets Timo Meier. That was a great trade for them. We talked about that already on the podcast. The Islanders went out and got Bo Horvat, and they also made a trade today with the Maple Leafs, and the Maple Leafs are making moves left and right because obviously they are trying to clear cap space for somebody. I think they're a little upset they didn't get in on the Patrick Kane thing, but they did not do that. The Islander trade Pierre Engvall for a 2024 third-round pick. So that's just the depth player for the Islanders at this point. So they got him. And obviously Bo Horvat trade happened earlier in the month. The Pittsburgh Penguins are under immense pressure to do something. I mean, could they call the San Jose Sharks and try to get like a Logan Couture or Erik Karlsson, maybe Mark-Edward Vlasic? I don't think they'll trade Thomas Hertl. I'd be surprised if they did that. But Pittsburgh has to do something in response to what the Rangers and the Devils have done. The Capitals are making moves left and right. They made that trade with Boston last week when they shipped out Dmitry Orlov and the forward Garnet Hathaway to Boston for a couple of picks and Greg Smith. They made more trades today. They first trade Marcus Johansson to the Minnesota Wild for 2024 third-round pick. So they get a pick for a guy that I think will help the Minnesota Wild. And then they turn around and acquire Rasmus Sandin from the Maple Leafs for Eric Gustafsson and a 2023 first-round pick. So the Boston pick that they got is going to Toronto with Eric Gustafsson for Rasmus Sandin. I like the Sandin deal for Washington. I really do. So at least you could say they turned Hathaway and Orlov into Sandin. And I like Sandin. Good young defenseman for them. So that's a move I like. But yeah, the Caps to me are the zigzag team. Like, they're doing sellers moves and buyers moves, which is pretty interesting. Everyone's on the table for Philly, apparently. Kevin Hayes, could he get moved? I know he has a couple of years left on his deal. Ivan Provorov, Tony DeAngelo could help somebody. They're not going to trade Carter Hart, I don't think. They have a lot of guys on injury reserve, which is kind of held them back this season. As Chuck Fletcher says, he's getting plenty of calls from possible trade partners as they're listening on anyone. Columbus should be a seller. Would Boone Jenner gauge any interest? I don't think they'll trade a Kirill Marchenko. Maybe Lane or Roslovic, but that it seems a little unlikely, but you never know. They really don't have any good defensemen that they can ship out. So Columbus is a little bit of an unknown when it comes to the trade deadline. Let's get into the Atlantic Division. The Maple Leafs are making moves left and right. They got Ryan O'Reilly, and now they ship out Sandin. They're obviously trying to go for a bigger move here, but we don't know what that move is. So they're probably looking to improve defensively. I would think that they're trying to make a move for a defenseman. To me, the guy that jumps out is Erik Karlsson. I really think that's what they're trying to get. So that's something to keep an eye on. Boston made their move with Hathaway and Orlov. Will they do something else? The Sabres are going to be a buyer. I think that an area they can improve as a back-end defenseman. Or even in goal. They could upgrade at goal in theory as well. Though Craig Anderson's a pretty solid veteran. The Red Wings, I think they're a little bit of an unknown when it comes to the trade deadline. They will probably be, they might be a buyer. They might be a buyer. But we shall see. But I think they have to improve the back end. And you could argue, I know their goalies have been decent this year at times, but you could argue goalie could be upgraded for them as well. The Lightning made their big trade by getting Tanner Genois from the Preds for a bunch of picks. He's in a contract year 2 restricted free agent. So I think they're set, the Lightning, so they obviously made their big move. Florida is 3 back of the Pens for the last spot, so they will probably be a buyer too. I think their bottom 6 needs improvement for sure. The Caps are 3 back. They're doing a mixture of buying and selling. Ottawa's 5 back. They should probably sell because I don't think they're any good. I think they are an overrated team. So, in terms of guys they can trade, could they trade Giroux? He's having a good year for Ottawa. I mean, is that even possible? Could they trade him? Another guy I think could be had is Cam Talbot for Ottawa. Philly, we talked about already. Montreal is awful. They're going to trade some guys away. Could they move Mike Hoffman? He could fit into somebody's bottom six. He would be a good fit with the Panthers. Jonathan Drouin's just awful. Josh Anderson hasn't been good this year. But that team, that roster, just looking at that roster, it is a train wreck of a roster. And a defenseman that I think could help somebody is David Savard. Like, that's somebody that I think could help the Red Wings. And then we talked about Columbus already. All right, the Central Division will start with the Dallas Stars. They're obviously going to be a buyer. I think that an area that they could improve on is their bottom six, for sure. But they really don't have a lot to do. I think that they're okay. And I really do like their top six. Although they could use one guy for, like, a middle line. The Avs, they are obviously the reigning champs. I think they might have a move in them. They need Gabriel Landeskog back, obviously. That's someone that they've missed for a while now. Minnesota, they've made some odd moves. Obviously, they go out and get Johansson from the Caps. And I think they could use one more bottom six forward. I think their D's really good. And Marc-Andre Fleury, I think, has taken a dip, unfortunately. And they just went out and got Gustav Nyquist, by the way. They got Nyquist from Columbus. And they got back a pick. Columbus did. So Minnesota just getting some depth pieces. At this point, they were shipping out a lot of midway draft picks, being like the third team in deals. So they traded away a 2023 fifth from the Bruins for Nyquist. The Winnipeg Jets. Winnipeg, I think, should do something before the deadline. Obviously, I think they're another team that needs to improve their bottom six. And even though their defense, their third line for D, I think needs to be addressed as well. The Preds are obviously selling. They just made a monster trade with the Oilers, trading away Matthias Ekholm and a 2024 sixth-round pick to the Oilers for Tyson Barrie, Reed Schaefer, a 23 first and a 24 fourth. I think that's a wonderful trade for Edmonton. They get a big-time defenseman. Nashville's just blowing it up at this point. They traded away the guy that they dealt to the Lightning. I'm blanking on his name already. Tanner Genois. So this is literally a for sale sign on the Preds. They're obviously going into a rebuilding period now, and they are 6 back of Seattle for the wild card. So it's obvious they see the writing on the wall and decide to hang it up for the season. I don't think they'll trade Roman Josi. That'd be crazy. Maybe they trade Brian McDonough. Could either Duchesne or Granlund or one of those guys be dealt? Maybe. we'll see. Colton Sissons could help somebody. The Blues, they're obviously selling. They traded away Vlad Tarasenko. They traded Ivan Barbashev to Vegas. I don't think they'll trade Pavel Buchnevich or Thomas Robert or Jordan Kyrou or maybe Brandon Saad. Braden Shen, could he get something? That maybe. But they're not going to trade Torrey Krug. They went out and signed him to a big free agent deal. I don't see them trading Colin Parayko. So maybe they're done making moves. Vancouver. They traded already Bo Horvat already. They traded Luke Shen today to the Leafs for a third. Will they trade Brock Besser? Could they trade JT Miller, who is injured right now? Connor Garland, could they trade him? This team looks like they're blowing it up, with the exception of Quinn Hughes. And I don't think that they'll trade Thatcher Demko. Demko's been awful this year, by the way, which is sad because he was so good a few years ago. I don't know why I just skipped over to Vancouver. That was weird. Arizona, they're another team that's awful. The guy that everyone and their mother expects them to move on from is Jacob Chychrun, who they're holding out for trade reasons. I think Pittsburgh's a good place for him. And I know they want to trade a Karel Vizmelka as well. About a 500 record. I could see him and Chychrun going to Pittsburgh together in a package. They won't trade Clayton Keller. They won't trade Nick Schmaltz. Nick Bjugstad, I could see them moving maybe. They have a lot of young guys. And then Shane Gothisbeer, I think, could move as well. And then obviously the Blackhawks traded Patrick Kane. Taves isn't going anywhere. He's dealing with long COVID, so I don't expect them to trade him unless it's in the summer. Could Seth Jones be on the move again? I know they made the big trade for him a few years ago, but I could see them dealing him. Tyler Johnson maybe could fetch something. But yeah, this is a young team, obviously a rebuilding team. Peter Mrazek's another one I could see. Maybe a change of scenery guy. Colin Blackwell has been traded a lot in the past. And then the Pacific Division, we talked about Vancouver already. Vegas, they're obviously going to be a buyer. I think they have one more move in them. They already went out and got Ivan Barbashev. I think there's more coming potentially. Aiden Hill's been terrific for them this season. Logan Thompson too, but he's hurt. But I could see them sniffing around fourth line guys maybe. The Kings, they're having a decent year. I expect them to go out and try to upgrade their offense. Their offense has actually been pretty good this year, but I do expect them to upgrade offensively and give them some depth. And I think they need help defensively as well. Phoenix Copley's outplayed Jonathan Quick this year, amazingly enough. I mean, this Jonathan Quick situation reminds me of Henrik Lundqvist from a couple of years ago, and he was just completely washed. But at least the Rangers had Shesterkin in place. I mean, is Phoenix Copley the answer long term? We don't know. It's a very, very interesting question. He really has put himself on the map this year in the NHL. So it's going to be interesting to see what LA does. Edmonton just went out and got Matthias Elcom, which is a big addition for them. And obviously, that's a team that always tends to go for it. as long as Connor McDavid's around. Seattle needs to make a move. The Seattle Kraken have to do something. I think they got to upgrade their offense. They need some more oomph offensively. They really do. And there's some guys that I really would like to see them go out and potentially acquire. I mean, if Philadelphia puts Kevin Hayes out there, maybe. If Max Domi's available, maybe. And I think they're set defensively. And then their goalie's been okay. Philip Grubauer, Martin Jones. So we'll see what the Kraken do. Calgary, my preseason pick to win the Cup. 4 back of a wild card. They were hot for a little bit, but they fell apart a little bit. I don't know what they're going to do. Making the case to buy, they're only 4 back. Seattle could easily fall out of it because of their inexperience. Winnipeg could fall out of it. They're capable of falling out of it. And they got to upgrade, especially on offense. And I think there's some guys that can absolutely help them. I mean, would Columbus trade Boone Jenner? Would they trade in division with Vancouver and get Brock Besser? I mean, there's a lot of guys that I think can help the Calgary Flames right now. And make the case for selling. Maybe it's like Nashville. They see the writing on the wall. They lose their next game. They're like, okay, let's blow it up. And we messed up by not bringing back Johnny Gaudreau and trading Matt Tkachuk. And then they trade some guys that would have value to other teams like Tyler Toffoli. Maybe Elias Lindholm. They won't trade Dylan Dubé. So maybe they trade some of their veterans away to other teams and they could kind of reboot a little bit. We talked about Vancouver already. San Jose, all eyes are on Erik Karlsson. I think he's going to move. I think it's either going to be the Maple Leafs or the Penguins, but at one point I think it's going to be Toronto. And I think Pittsburgh goes for Jacob Chychrun. I think Mark-Edward Vlasic makes sense for the Pittsburgh Penguins, too. Logan Couture, I made the case for him in Pittsburgh. I could see him going there. Nick Bonino, I think, is a good veteran. If the Flames decide to buy, I could see him going to Calgary. But there's a lot of guys that I see with value on the San Jose Sharks that could help other teams. And obviously Karlsson is the big fish. And last but not least, the Anaheim Ducks. They're obviously going to be a seller. They're not going to trade Trevor Zegras. They're not going to trade Mason McTavish. They won't trade Max Jones. They won't trade Troy Terry. They will not trade some of their good young D-men like Jamie Drysdale. But John Gibson, he's had a bad year this year. He hasn't really been good for a while now. But maybe change of scenery, somebody take a chance on him. Maybe Pittsburgh if Tristan Jarry's out for a while. So we'll see with John Gibson and who could potentially acquire him. I think some of these ex-Rangers, Frank Vetrano, who they went out and got in the offseason, I think could have value to another team. And Ryan Strome, I think those two guys they could trade and get something for. And Cam Fowler. Will they trade him? Dmitry Kulikov, unrestricted free agent, so maybe somebody can rent him. John Klingberg could fit anywhere. Kevin Shattenkirk, too. So I think the Ducks have a lot of guys that they could potentially trade to some other teams. So before we go, to recap the day, in terms of trades. The big one, Patrick Kane to the Rangers for a 2023 conditional second and a 2024 fourth. Or is it 2025 fourth? Wild get Gustav Nyquist for 2023 fifth. Oilers get Matthias L. Coleman in 2024 sixth for Tyson Barrie, Reed Schaefer, 2023 first, 2024 fourth. Rangers trade Austin Rushoff to Nashville for future considerations. That's a cap move. Islanders acquire Pierre Engvall from the Maple Leafs for 2024 third round pick. Vancouver trades Luke Schenn to Toronto for a 2023 third. So a lot of Maple Leafs moves. So we'll see what move they make. But according to Cap Friendly, trading Pierre Engvall clears enough cap space to allow for activating Matt Murray. And then Toronto trades acquires Eric Gustafsson in 2023 Boston pick from the Caps for Rasmus Sandin. Marcus Johansson in Minnesota for 2024 third. Henry Thurn to the Ducks for 2024 third. We talked about Kane already. And then the other one that happened, Carolina gets Jesse Puljujarvi for the signing rights to Patrick Pustola. So Carolina taking a chance on Puljujarvi, but I think they got to do something larger than that. So a ton of trades. Another one today, or no, this was yesterday. Riley Stillman for Josh Bloom. That was yesterday. So, big day in the NHL. We're going to do daily segments about the trade deadline and things I'm hearing and such throughout the week on the regular podcasts. So, have a great night, everyone.